Hi everybody, welcome back. I thought I'd record this video on therapy, behavior therapy, and treatment efficacy. It's Sunday morning, and oh my goodness, what do we have here? We have a stockpiling of toilet paper. Why might I be highlighting that right now? Well, behavior therapy that we're going to talk about today is often used as a go-to treatment for different types of phobias. And we're going to talk about one particular type of phobia today, which is fear of flying. I suppose we could apply it to fear of running out of toilet paper, need to hoard and stockpile. This is not an advertisement for Purex, although it looks like it. Okay. Maybe we should, no, I'll leave the toilet paper there for now. So, behavior therapy, where are we heading to today? Let me get my PowerPoint in front of me. So just to introduce the notion, problems are learned behaviors that can be changed. Okay. Changing behavior leads to success in therapy, not increasing awareness. So this is in contrast to psychodynamic therapy, isn't it? Psychodynamic therapy and humanistic therapy, so Rogerian, Gestalt, and psychoanalytic Freudian therapy believes that we get better, our symptoms reduce, because we become more aware of our, maybe the historical precursors to our disorder. Remember the tremendous emphasis that Fritz Perls put on awareness especially of the here and now. Well, behavior therapy is focused on challenging us oftentimes to do that which we fear the most. Okay, so if you're afraid of public speaking, you should do public speaking. If you're afraid of swimming and swimming pools, and I've used that example of myself before, then the way to reduce and ultimately extinguish that fear, that phobia, is to do the thing that you're afraid of. So I've said here in the PowerPoint, behavior therapy is based on the idea of counter conditioning, pairing the trigger stimulus, snakes, spiders, flying, water, with a new response, sometimes relaxation. So what's behind this is this idea that you can't be both afraid and relaxed at the same time. That's what counter conditioning is all about. Pairing the trigger stimulus, so for me, a swimming pool, ocean, lake, with relaxation. And there's a particular technique that I want to share with you that's on the next slide. It's called systematic desensitization, and it was made popular by a fellow called Volpe, W-O-L-P-E. It's a type of exposure therapy, which is a type of behavior therapy, and it's called exposure therapy because you expose the person to that which they fear. So somebody getting a behavior therapy, exposure therapy treatment for spiders would be exposed to a spider. Sometimes it's gradual, and that's the most common type of exposure therapy. So for example, you see a picture of a spider, and if that goes well, if you maintain relaxation or you don't freak out too much, you go on to being in a room with a spider in an aquarium, and ultimately right up, gradually exposing you right up to maybe you holding on to a tarantula. Yeah, not gonna happen. So systematic desensitization is a type of exposure therapy, but it's done in a virtual sense. It's done having the client imagine the thing that they're fearful of. So two things, and if we were in the classroom today, you'd be doing some progressive relaxation. So there's two parts to systematic desensitization. One is this idea of an anxiety hierarchy, which I'll share with you in a moment, and the other is this idea of relaxation. Okay, so training, progressive relaxation, you train the client in how to relax. Um, so years ago when I was in grad school, to give you an example of systematic desensitization, the fellow who headed up the music school at that time at UBC, approached the counseling psychology department where I was taking a course and said, look, we have final year music students who are going to be doing their recital, piano recital, in front of an audience, and they're going to be graded, and they're quite anxious about that. And so is there anything you could offer to help? And so we said, yeah, we can do progressive relaxation with these folks, and systematic desensitization. So we actually, had them construct an anxiety hierarchy. And so an anxiety hierarchy is you get the client to tell you from lowest to highest what they're imagining will be anxiety provoking about, for example, the recital. So at the bottom of the anxiety hierarchy, they may have said, well, it's a week before the recital and I'm practicing at home and I make a mistake. And then a level up, they might say, well, it's the night before and I'm making mistakes. Until finally at the top of their hierarchy, they're in the middle of their recital and they seem to have forgotten a piece of the recital. So if you want to see another anxiety hierarchy, click on the link in the PowerPoint, and this is this may be an example of a phobia or a fear, at least, that we're fairly we might be able to identify with. So this is an anxiety hierarchy or a desensitization hierarchy for flying. Okay, so here again, these are constructed by the client with the therapist's help. Here, the individual has an example has said, you're reading a newspaper and notice an ad for an airline. And they go up as the number gets bigger. You look at the runway as the plane is ready for takeoff. Number 15, you look at the window as the plane leaves the ground. It's kind of ironic, planes aren't flying right now. But anyway, that's another example of an anxiety hierarchy. So why do you do that? Well, what you do once you've constructed that anxiety hierarchy is you start training the client in progressive relaxation. Okay? So again, systematic desensitization has those two things, anxiety hierarchy and progressive relaxation. So what we did with the music students was we said, well, start at the, one-on-one, start at the lowest level of the situation that triggers anxiety with respect to the recital. And now visualize that, and now we're going to take you through relaxation. I've actually posted a progressive relaxation script. I think it's next to my PowerPoint lecture this week. But essentially, it's a technique that you can use to help clients relax, and it's done by, it takes about 20 minutes to do, and it's done by having people tense and then relax different muscle groups. So oftentimes you work from the bottom up. So, imagine yourself sitting in class and there's Wooly at the front, lights are dimmed, there's no toilet paper, and I'm saying, okay, I want you to tense your toes, scrunch your toes up really tight, hold it, okay, now relax, and now tense your leg muscles really tight, hold it, and relax. And you go through a bunch of different muscle groups in the body. And what you're doing, it is, I find, profoundly relaxing, but you're training people in a basic, simple technique they can use to lower their anxiety level. And you're also teaching them the difference between tension and relaxation. They're constantly tensing and feeling what it feels like to tense. So if I said to you, tense your forehead, make your forehead furrowed, right? kind of hurts. And then in the progressive relaxation, you realize, oh, now I get to relax my forehead. Doesn't that feel better? Okay. So, all right, so back to the anxiety hierarchy and systematic desensitization. So your goal in this therapy is to work the client all the way through the anxiety hierarchy whilst keeping them relaxed using progressive relaxation. Okay, so if I go back to the anxiety hierarchy about flying, let's say that the client has learned how to relax using progressive relaxation. You've got the client to number 3. Your boss tells you you need to take a business trip by air, and the client starts getting tense. The client signals you by sticking their finger up, I'm feeling tense. Then you back off, you refocus on progressive relaxation. You take them back to step number 2, and then gradually progress. So this takes several therapy sessions, and your goal ultimately, as I said, is to work the client through the entire hierarchy. Okay, so the skeptics out there are going, yeah, okay, so you've trained the client how to relax in your therapeutic office. Well, actually, it does, using these techniques, it does transfer to the real world. But it's a legitimate critique. There's a step there that has to occur. I've listed here at the bottom of the slide that I've referenced cognitive behavior therapy, right? Because we've talked about cognitive therapy, Albert Ellis, and we've talked about behavior therapy. Well, as you might imagine, cognitive behavior therapy is a combination of the two, right? So you're using techniques from both. So the cognitive side, you're helping people reframe situations, challenging their assumptions, challenging how they think. And on the behavioral side, you're probably giving people homework assignments. You're challenging them to change their behavior. So you're working with somebody who's got strong social anxiety. You would be encouraging that person to do that which they fear, so go out and engage with other people socially. All right, so the next couple of slides are about treatment efficacy, and I think they're pretty self-explanatory, and I'll let you review those yourself. Bottom line, thank goodness, therapy does seem to be effective. It does tend to speed up the rate at which we gain some relief from our symptoms, be they anxiety or be they depression. Less chance of relapse. And this is the really interesting finding, that the early finding on treatment efficacy was that no particular type of treatment was any better than the other. So when this study came out, what's called a meta-analysis, basically what Smith and Glass did was they summarized hundreds of other experiments. And what they concluded was, behavior therapy was no better than cognitive therapy, no better than psychodynamic therapy. Well, as you can imagine, this really pissed off a lot of clinicians. They didn't like that at all. The other thing they found, which is very interesting, is that it didn't seem to matter. The experience level of the therapist or the individual providing the treatment didn't seem to matter much, whether it was provided by a psychologist, psychiatrist, social worker, etc. Wow. Okay. So what is the core ingredient? Why is it that one therapy appears to be no better than the others? Think about that a little bit. Think about what Rogers would say is the core of any effective therapy. What do you think he'd say? He'd go back to the fundamentals around building a therapeutic alliance through demonstrating empathy, unconditional positive regard, and genuineness. So it seems to be the quality of relationship that struck the therapeutic alliance. The quality of relationship between client and therapist is probably one of the most important things. The other point I'll make, just as I start to wrap up now, is that really the original question was too simple. You know, what type of therapy is most effective? Well, maybe you should be asking the question, what type of therapy is most effective for what particular type of disorder, right? That's probably a better question to ask. And that's the question that's behind the current movement of evidence-based practice. So the American Psychological Association convened a task force to look into, to address this question empirically. In other words, what does the research indicate? Which type of therapy is best for which type of disorder? And what they found was that behavior therapy and cognitive behavior therapy, I've said here, bubble to the top of the list for treating several different anxiety disorders, PTSD, major depressive disorder, and behavior therapy seems to be most effective for phobias in particular, right? We talked a fair bit about that, how if phobias are learned, then maybe the best way to treat them is by helping people unlearn the phobia. Okie dokie, I will wrap up at this stage and put away the toilet paper. And I wish you all the best and hope you're doing well and stay in touch with me via email. I just posted your bonus participation grades in Launchpad, and I sent you all a batch email just indicating that. Take care, stay healthy, and look for a couple more videos on social psychology in the next few days. Bye-bye.